Hello.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Am I the first one?
You are. Can you guys hear us okay?
Yeah.
Ashley, hello.
I think that's Amy talking.
Well, there's
Here I am.
Hey, this is cool.
I know.
Yeah.
Wait,
I had to click
you
start
want me to
video.
come here. It's nice to meet you.
You too. You've been the voices in my ears like for a few weeks.
I love it. I love it. So Ashley is here. Ashley, you are welcome to put a video or not. It's completely up to you. Got Becky's coming in. So we're just going to let people keep rolling in for a little bit. Becky?
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, sorry. Oh, she's getting her kids are sleeping right now.
Oh, gotcha.
Or something.
We're just eating a bunch of graham crackers, so both of our mouths are like full
Good.
of food.
They were delicious.
They were delicious.
I have a fan blasting on me because I'm in Vermont and like I don't have AC and it's like 88.
You don't need AC there, do you?
Not usually, no. But like right now I'm like dying.
It's hot here. We would die without AC.
Yeah, I grew up in Florida actually.
You what?
I grew up.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, Daytona area.
Oh, that's crazy. That's awesome.
Hey,
Yeah.
Lindsay.
I haven't spent a whole lot of time there, but
So
seems nice.
y'all are welcome to
Or at
do
least it was
videos
nice
or
then.
not. Sorry, I'm interrupting
Sorry.
you. I
Okay.
apologize.
Just trying to have a conversation. It's okay though.
Just trying to tell people they don't have to show their faces if they don't want to. That's all.
Can we still hear them?
As long as they haven't muted themselves. Can you guys see each other whenever we talk? Hello, Ashley.
I see Becky and Ashley. I know.
Wait, unmute Ashley. We can't hear her.
Wait, do I have to unmute her?
Yeah.
No, but I think she has control over that. But
I don't think so.
Hear me now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
There, that works.
Like unmute Becky too, because they can mute us, but we can't.
Gotcha.
Okay. Sorry. Now we can hear you, Becky.
Hi, Courtney.
Hi.
Hey.
Hi. I love this. This is fun already.
Really cool.
I know you haven't asked us questions yet, but it's still fun. All right.
Wait, where'd Becky go? Oh,
She's right there. Okay, so let's give people like 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. How's everyone's day been going?
All right.
All right. I'm going to text my husband real quick and tell him to be quiet when he walks in the door. 1 second.
Oh. I am.
Person?
Yeah.
My face is very big all of a sudden.
I don't know who said that. How do we know who says what?
It should pop up, but this is our first time doing this with this many people, so we will just have to be open to what happens.
Yeah, this is definitely a learning curve technology thing.
I know
for us.
sometimes when people use it, it changes whoever's talking, but it doesn't look like it's doing that. Is it doing that on any of y'all's end? Does it change to me whenever I'm talking to someone else?
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
It is.
I think you can change your view too, at least for me. It's like I can see everyone at once, sort of.
Yeah, I think ours is not set up. This is weird. Like, why are we just like focusing on Courtney? Right here maybe. Window settings.
She loves seeing like up close pictures of yourself. So fun. I still feel like I have green crackers in my mouth.
You definitely had something in your teeth when I walked in.
Did I? Okay. My video when I speak? Maybe that?
Hide non-video participants too, maybe?
No, but then it only shows some people.
Like the ones who don't, like, why do we want to see, like, their names?
But then we can't see who's there.
We're gonna have to do this later, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll look at it later.
Yeah, y'all are gonna have to wave your hand if you're talking or something, because it's a
Same.
little bit, or like, say your name or something, because it's, oh, perfect. Oh, cool.
Just kidding.
I don't know if it looks the same for y'all, but you can click on the right-hand corner on that little grid thing, and everybody kind of just like comes together in a little grid, and it's helpful. So.
I think that's what I'm seeing.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
I think.
You're already ahead of the game.
You're smarter than us.
Yeah.
All right, we're super not good at technology, per usual. All right. Yay, there's a baby here too. Hi. I love kids. He's
He's
like,
got all the baby fever.
I do. Okay, so what we'll do. So true. We have until 6:30 together, so we have some questions from ahead of time. Then we also have some book club questions. So what I figured is we can do like Q&A style for the first half, and then we can switch to talk about the book club. That good with everybody?
Good.
And now there's graham crackers in my throat, so you have to talk real quick. Okay, so y'all ask away. Do y'all want me to start with the questions we already have, or do y'all want to go ahead and start asking questions?
And this is fun because it's like interact. Like this is so weird because all the Q&As we've done are just like you
Staring blankly at like Facebook.
This is really weird. Yeah. But yeah, I hope you'll have questions about anything and everything because hopefully we have answers.
Hopefully. So, anyone want to go first? Dun, dun, dun. No, I can go ahead. Why don't I start with maybe some of the Facebook questions? That will help get us started. Okay. The first question we're going to answer is from Jessie. She said she'd love to know her thoughts on exercising every day and or incorporating rest days, especially if your daily activity level fluctuates from day to day. And then 2, she'd like any advice.
Hey, actually first, let's go around and like all introduce ourselves.
Oh, yeah, of course. Let's do
I
that.
forgot to do that. Okay, well, y'all know us, obviously. I'm Meg, Victoria. Hey! So, yeah, everybody just go around and say your name if you can, and, like, if you're not, like, muted or whatever, and where you're from, and what you do.
Amy, go.
Okay. I'm Amy. I live in Burlington, Vermont, and I am a travel blogger.
Oh, very cool.
That's awesome.
How did you get started doing that?
Oh, gosh, just a few years ago, like, just got into it, and, you know, I have Instagram, and, like, I think I've, like, chatted with some of you guys on Instagram. Well, you guys, you too.
What's your Instagram name?
Two Drifters XO.
Two Drifters? Oh, yeah! I know you! Yeah!
Lord.
That's amazing.
That's big.
Cool. Very good. Nice to meet you.
That is so freaking cool.
Actually. And Courtney.
My name's Courtney. I live in Nacogdoches, Texas right now. I'm going to school at Stephen F. Austin. Yeah.
Cool. What are you studying?
Dietetics.
Ah, very good. Yay. What year are you in?
I'm in my master's right now.
Oh, cool. Nice. Nacogdoches is beautiful.
Where is that
Yeah.
located?
East Texas-ish.
Yeah.
Nice. Super fun. Yay. Becky.
I have myself on mute because kids are watching stuff, but I'm Becky. I live in Florida, and I take care of her and my son. That's about it.
precious kids.
Precious. I know. Look at her. She's like, Mom, what are you doing?
Cool.
Nice to meet you, Becky.
Ashley.
I think that my phone kind of got messed up when you guys asked this question, so I don't.
Oh, just your name and where you're from and what you do.
Oh, okay. I'm Ashley. I live in Boston, and I walk dogs.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, that's
Jealous.
You guys all have such cool backgrounds. This
Yeah.
is awesome to learn more about you each.
That's super fun.
Cool.
Good job.
Boston's beautiful too. So,
I love Boston. I went for the first time here.
was that really your first time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I loved Boston. It was amazing. And then I don't know if we can hear the other people. Can we hear them?
Mackenzie, can we hear you?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hey.
Hi. Sorry, you can't see me. My name's Mackenzie. I'm from Seattle, and I work for the Seattle Mariners.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Hello.
Yay. And then I don't know, the other person who's here, what's your name? Because it's not showing up. Maybe?
Maybe.
Mysterious person?
Dun-dun-dun.
I don't think we're going to be able to hear him. Okay, cool. Let's go back to the questions.
Okay, cool.
Nice to meet you all.
All right, just to confirm, does anyone want to start with questions, or do you guys want me to go to them up on Facebook?
The Facebook ones are good.
Okay,
As long
cool.
as y'all don't have anything that you're just dying to get out.
Okay, so I'll start over. Thank you for introducing me. That was brilliant. Okay, so the first question is from Jessie. 2 questions. The first one is, I'd love to know what your thoughts are on exercising every day and or incorporating rest days, especially for daily activity level fluctuates from day to day. And 2, I'd greatly appreciate any advice you ladies can offer on reconciling how one's appearance changes with recovery and drive to continue on that journey. That is, when I started this process, I was very thin and pale, and quite honestly, I looked sickly. Now that I've started to work on pursuing an intuitive lifestyle, I look much healthier, which so often I find being permission to stop progressing and changing habits help. Again, I hope I can make it, but if not, I look forward to watching the recording. Okay, cool. So answering the first question, Meg, do you want to start with the idea of like incorporating rest days, especially if your activity level fluctuates from day to day?
Yeah, I'm not really sure exactly what her question is here, but rest days are
Like
really
critical.
good.
You
Like,
have to have them.
like that's like a non-negotiable. Like I'm really at this point just, I guess putting myself back to when I was like super addicted to exercise, rest days was like a non-thing. You didn't rest. So I guess I understand from that perspective. Rest days are just like not even rest days. They're just like days that you just like don't exercise because we don't need to exercise every single day.
I think that's a good point, because when you look at a rest day, it's almost like the whole like idea of like that cheat meal, cheat day mentality, when it's just like sometimes you just don't exercise. It's
Yeah.
like almost like you let yourself have often. I agree. It's like some days you just don't
Just
exercise.
don't exercise. I'm not like necessarily like I don't feel like my day is not complete without exercise, and I don't feel like I'm resting from anything. I'm just like not adding on exercise, and that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, or a day or 5 days or a month or whatever, however long this period needs to be. So yeah, that's all that.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I would say like if we have to call it rest days, I would say at least, I think 2 days a week is needed.
Oh yeah.
But I even think, so far my perspective from a clinical practice is, because I know, especially like within, and y'all correct me if I'm wrong or give me your thoughts, but I feel like especially in the Instagram world, the whole concept of like 5 to 6 days a week of exercising is very normalized. But as I learn more about normal exercisers, normal eaters, I feel like people who exercise have weeks where they don't, weeks where they do, and weeks where they do. It's typically more like 3 to 4 days a week.
Yeah.
Some people 5, but it's more on the higher level. What about you guys? Have you guys ever noticed that, or are you trying to figure out what you like your intuitive exercise looks like?
I've just been walking a lot lately, and kind of incorporating it like into my day, which I like. So I don't just think of it like exercise.
I think walking is so I don't know,
Undervalued,
underappreciated.
yeah.
Walks are they're like almost the perfect exercise, the perfect movement. Because they don't like stress your body out. It's movement where you can get out and, get out in nature and look at the sky and enjoy everything, but you can just think and meditate. But yeah, I love walking. Anyways.
I agree. Anyone else want to talk about exercise?
Thoughts?
Where do I?
See, so for my job, I walk pretty often.
I bet. You have dogs, will they like pulling you like crazy, or are they all pretty well behaved?
Oh my God, they pull so much. They're so naughty all
So
the
you're getting like an intense exercise just from your job.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say is that so I used to do aerial stilts, and I don't really do that much anymore, but I do contortion about once a week. I take classes in that. So that's like kind of intense stretching, sort of like aerobic type of thing. And that's only once a week, and then I just have like walking for work, but that's really all I do. I mean, I also live in the city, so I walk a lot outside of work too. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I haven't really put a lot of thought into exercise. I don't know if
I don't think you need to.
Well, that means like really intuitive about it too, right? Like you're not overthinking it. You haven't had to get back to that place where you have to basically like rework your relationship with it. I think, when we think about traditionally, that's what people did. They didn't go to the gym, they just like lived life and had movement in their life. And so if you're able to do that, like, unfortunately, a lot of people, work desk jobs, so they have to go walk after, like me, I'm not, walking for my job or something or get moving that way. But like, that's just like a traditional mentality around movement. And like, that's honestly ideal, I think.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
So that's awesome. It sounds like a lot of y'all have like
walking
really good. You're really intuitive about your exercise. Like it sounds like.
Anybody else want to share? Anyone struggling with exercise? You want to talk about that?
I struggle with exercise.
Yeah. Is it with like the intensity or just like the frequency, and any like advice you like from us as to support with that?
I guess probably the frequency. I ran cross country and long distance track here at SFA, and when I finished that about a year ago, it's just been hard to find. I mean, I was probably over exercising even when I was doing that, but ever since then, it's really been hard to find a balance because it's not like you have a coach telling you what to do anymore. So, I mean, I guess you'd probably say I'm obsessive with exercise. Like, I don't know the last time I had a rest day at all.
But you know what? You're so right. Like, you have a different background story, right? And it just goes to show that not everyone has the same story. Like, athletes do have a completely different relationship with exercise, and it's part of like your life because of you did athletics in college. So, and I've always, like, whenever I'm working with clients, I'm always telling them, you know where you came from. I was not an athlete at all growing up. So for me, the amount of exercise I can handle is going to be different than maybe your body can handle. But with that being said, the moment you think you could potentially be over exercising, generally a sign from your intuition that you are. Like, I always tell people, like, if you're questioning it, it's generally a sign that you're probably doing the right thing. So just start with like maybe one rest day a week, right? If it's been a really long time since you've taken a rest day, maybe just start with one.
Yeah, you don't have to cut it cold turkey by any means. Like, I also had a really intense relationship with exercise, I guess I could describe it as. And it wasn't, honestly, this is going to be different for everyone, but for me, I didn't cut it all out at once. I did it slowly and gradually worked on my relationship with exercise. If I would have worked with like somebody like myself right now, I would have been like, yo, cut it all out. But all to say, you don't have to cut it all out all at once in order to get there. I don't feel like it has to be all or nothing. So just like slowly, maybe like Victoria said, one day or maybe instead of even just taking a rest day, if that's even too much for you, just like go on a walk. I don't know what your version of exercise is, but take it down a little notch. I don't know if you're doing like running every single day or whatever, but just take it down a notch. But just little challenges that don't seem like
overwhelming.
daunting.
Yeah. Because otherwise it's going to feel too daunting.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing, Courtney.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else have
Resonate
anything
with
they
that
want to
stuff.
share or any struggles they're having?
Exercise thoughts.
Exercise thoughts.
All right. What's the next part of your question?
Let me pull it up. Okay. And then the second part is just talking about reconciling with how our appearance changed with recovery and the journey to continue. She was saying that when she was thin, she looked sickly. Now that she's looking much healthier, it's hard to stop it's hard to continue in the progression, was what she was saying. Which I can totally understand, right? If you are noticing visible changes, it's easy to want to stop. This is something else we'll notice is a lot of times clients will get their periods back and then they'll immediately want to stop all the efforts that they've been putting towards with diet or an exercise break. It's the moment they get an exercise, they're oh, go back to diet mentality. And I can see how that would be an easy thing to want to do, but you have to, I think this is where one of the things I'll tell my clients to do is have their value systems written out. Meg and I are both huge bullet journals, so we always literally always have our journals with us. But you can always have your iPhone your notes section. So,
yeah, it was behind the
have
what
your
are they called?
notes
The
and your
curtain
value
things.
systems pulled up at all times so that you can remind yourself constantly of what's important to you.
Yeah, and the Ellis.
So that you don't get caught up in that, oh, I'm already better, I don't need to progress any farther. What do you think?
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I think that we have this misconception that our bodies and our physical health and our emotional health are going to be on the exact same progression and the exact same timeline, and that's just not the reality of recovery of any sort, of repairing your relationship with food or exercise or what have you. And so it can be really trippy for people when they start looking differently. They're oh, I look healthier, or I got my period back and I have more energy, or all this stuff. But that's not really ultimately, that's great and that matters, but what really matters is what's going on emotionally, mentally, and that relationship with your food and your body and everything. So just be real with yourself about where you're at and not going off your physical symptoms to tell you, because that, then again, in doing that, that's good, but that's not your full, that's not listening fully to your intuition and honoring yourself.
Yeah, because I think whenever you are at that place of intuitive eating and living, you don't have to question who I should stop now. It doesn't, it's not
yeah. If you're questioning is this good, can I stop now, of any sort that, that's when you need to
Hey, real quick guys, let's everyone let's try muting it unless you're talking, and that way we can just hear one at a time, and then if you want to talk, unmute so we can talk. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah, that's a great. Yeah, that's a great way to do it. And then send them each maybe. Oh, is it just one?
Well, yeah. So look at it.
What I would do
It's only one address. So it's
We'll give her a second, but
do 3 ways. You could do Dear All and send them each one.
anybody have
individually.
any questions with that,
So it would be
thoughts that they have?
so it would be like Mariner's Care.
Anyone dealing with
Dear Gina.
experiences
I'm
or
saying, dear
Yeah.
Cares is one.
Wanna
This
talk
is
about?
Dr. Richard.
Yeah.
This is Dr. Anderson.
And I know
Right.
this whole,
And 3.
That's what I would do. This is a little less awkward than saying Dear Dan, Chris, and Richard or whatever.
she's probably at work.
oh,
Mackenzie, can she hear me? I can't figure out how to mute her.
Sorry, I can't really talk out loud.
Hey, can you mute yourself? We love you, but we can hear you. And then you guys can unmute yourself whenever you want to talk. I forgot about that.
yeah, it's good.
Awesome.
Okay,
Okay.
it's so quiet.
I
It's
was
nice.
gonna say something about what you were just saying. I feel like I have the opposite problem. I do something, I'm doing something healthy, and then I'm like, oh, that's enough. Now I can go back to just eating whatever I want, which is in my mind bad, or you know, I don't know, out of control or something. So it's like I feel like I stopped the good habits too soon, if that makes sense.
You stopped the what too soon?
Like good habits. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, I was healthy for like a day. Like I'm done. I'm healthy now. Or something.
Right. Yeah, I think that so you have like a different perspective, I guess, than like going one obsession. And I don't even think I would call yours like an obsession. Like, how would you describe your relationship with food?
I mean, not good, but
Like,
I
because you
think,
still have like good labels on foods.
yeah, and I'm more like guilt ridden if I overeat or I feel like I like lost control or something. I tend not to be as restrictive now as I used to be, but I have more guilt for like letting myself eat normally.
So what I hear you saying is the main thing you need to work on is removing the guilt from foods. And I think that's a good place for asking yourself questions, because I find a lot of times guilt is associated with so much more than just like the actual guilt upon eating. A lot of times it's very rooted in like guilt of like, I'm not meeting this expectation of who I am, or I have guilt of like, it's just usually a lot deeper. So I think a really good place, if you can't figure out why you're feeling a certain way about something, is just asking yourself questions and either journaling or just speaking out loud even to yourself alone, like about like what comes up naturally as a response to that. What are your thoughts on guilt? I can totally relate to that, and it's just one of those things where you have to figure out like where the guilt is coming from. Like a lot of it for me was I felt guilty for not eating perfectly because I felt like I needed to be perfect, right? So, and that's not gonna be true for everyone. Or maybe it's like lack of, you lost control, so you feel guilty for that, or not meeting this expectation of how you feel like you should eat. So it's just, I think a lot of times with things like those specific types of emotions are usually like a lot to why they're occurring.
Yeah, I think it's a lack of control, thinking, oh, if I was controlled, I wouldn't have eaten that. And I know it's silly because sometimes it'll be like a banana. And I'm like, I shouldn't have eaten that banana.
Yeah, so right here, that's such good insight though to say like, I think it's lack of control, right? Because it's so easy to want to project control onto food. It's actually a huge coping mechanism for so many of us to want to control food when other areas of our life are out of control. Or if you feel like your physical health or in some ways your body is out of control, it's typical to want to control food. And then you're right, like if you ate something you felt like you shouldn't have, I can see where the guilt would come from. But as you can tell, like it's like unraveling the layers of the emotions involved with that. And again, like I think starting by just asking questions can be really valuable, because so often our thoughts are, we're so quick to create actions based off of our thoughts, but if we can start to question and just kind of start to consider why we're thinking things, it can help us to change the actions and not act according to like the guilt, for example. Because like thinking myself, I would always feel guilty if I didn't eat a certain way, so I'd restrict, but the restriction later led to binge eating, and it was like this vicious cycle of constantly stopping. So in order to stop it, I had to figure out like why it was happening.
Right.
Yeah, like I don't think you by any means, like anybody else, need to like, I think I'm trying to articulate my words correctly. Which is the story of my life. Just like anyone else in intuitive eating and the relationship with food, you don't need to like force yourself to eat like healthy foods or, you know, not eat the banana. Like you still need to give yourself permission to eat whatever you want. Like there's still, and I think people's disorder relationship with food can manifest itself in different ways, but all stemming from a root, I think, of having morality around food, having, you know, deeper issues with self-judgment and worrying about that, and also like these labels, this dichotomy we have around food. So I think still like unpacking that and like why do we have these labels towards foods, and why do you feel certain ways around food, and why do you feel like you have to eat this certain way, because a lot of people like they feel like they have to eat this certain way, and that pushes on the other way, like this rebel personality, like, well, I'm not going to eat that way, and that's not what I want to eat now, you know, like when in reality, if you removed all the labels from food and just kind of let your body gravitate towards what you want, you might eat, you know, a kale salad 1 second and then like pizza the second, or hamburgers, or what, it would allow you to gravitate more naturally versus feeling resentful towards something or fearful around something. Anyways, there's a lot to be said about that, and we could go on and on about it, but I hope that was not confusing and just
good.
kind of helpful.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else have any other thoughts with that or any questions?
Cool.
So I'm going to answer a question I actually got privately. Mackenzie had to leave, but she had some questions on if anyone has joint pain when eating new foods. And does anyone feel that or have any suggestions for that? No? I usually say joint pain can happen when someone's adding new foods because their body's getting used to eating it.
Yeah, I think that's joint pain and any other type of, not any type of pain, I'm not saying, but like
when you're recovering from
digestive issues are very common.
Yeah. And just, it depends on of course, where you are in your story, but sometimes there can be, I think digestive issues is a great example of that. A lot of times there's digestive issues stemming whenever you introduce new foods, and you can't, in those circumstances, go off with your symptoms as a reason why you shouldn't eat those foods. You just need to keep introducing those foods in, and your body will get used to those foods.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get tripped up during recovery. They have a negative reaction to food. And sorry, I just thought of a story. I'm not smiling because that's funny. I'm not laughing at this. They'll have some sort of negative reaction, whether it's digestive or whatever, and they think, well, I'm just not able to eat that, and it kind of perpetuates that negative relationship with said food, when in reality it's not the food. It's we're just so unused to eating maybe a food that is just normal to eat. But our body's just not, if you don't eat something for a really long time, there's a lot of reasons that your body might react negatively towards it.
And I think that's why so many people see in pseudo recoveries, because their bodies have negative reactions when they eat something.
Yeah.
And
they're like, oh, I can't eat that apparently.
It's usually a sign that their body's still recovering. Yeah, and then
you get more restrictive again, and it's oh, well, now I'm recovered, but I have to eat this certain way. And it's no, it's just a mess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope that answered that question, but she's not here.
Okay, anyone have any thoughts or any more questions with that specific thing I'm on, or y'all want me to go to the next question?
But I think certain things could help with the joint pain.
Turmeric would be one of the main things I think of. Evening primrose oil,
maybe activated charcoal.
Maybe, yeah.
Depending on what food and why.
Okay, cool. So on to the next question. Okay, sorry, I'm just pulling it up. Okay, how to carry on giving yourself permission when you're gaining weight past a minimal healthy weight and also dealing with body image at that point. For me, there's a certain point that I'm happy with how I look, which is normal weight, but I know it's not my natural weight because I need to control food to maintain it. But whenever I go above it, the body hatred kicks in and I don't know how to stop it. Ooh, girl, get that. Anybody else dealing with that or struggle with that themselves?
They're muted.
Yeah, hands in the air, waving like you just don't care. My brain is funny today. I can relate to this because I was, and I don't want to say specific numbers here because sometimes numbers can be triggering for people, but I will say when I was in an eating disorder, I was a quote unquote natural or normal weight to a lot of people, but my body in its recovery is bigger than quote unquote normal. So I get that you want to stay in the healthy, but you have to control. But the moment someone says they have to control their intake, that means to me you're not at your body's set point. From there, it definitely gets complicated though, right? Because that means you have to unravel all the layers of everything we've ever been told about having to be a specific size. And as women, I'm sure all of you can relate to this idea of we've been told to be smaller is to be better, right? And that we need to take up less space and just be as small as possible. Right? That's kind of the ideal of today's world right now. And I think that's where Sarah, who asked this question, I think that's where the work needs to be done. As you guys can tell, like a lot of times our answers to things is like, it really is about deep stuff. This isn't just like, oh, like let go control of food, or oh, like you just need to accept your body as it is. It's like, well, why do you feel that you have to be this certain ideal? And understanding that we've all been told that we need to be as thin as possible. I think that it's honestly a huge part of that, because you're never going to be okay with being a different body size if you don't do that work first.
Yeah, I kind of feel like, I mean, yeah, it's much easier said than done. Like, it's not just like a few steps and then you're there. But I feel like I wish our society would just kind of culturally agree that, well, we need to just like obliterate normals or whatever. But also, like, I think what is considered normal right now and ideal is like way less.
So skewed.
It's so off-centered than where it like needs to be. Like, there's just like, you know, this bell curve kind of thing, and like we all need to just like move it over a lot, because right now this normal is a normal that women have to, it's not normal. It's like women have to restrict and over exercise in order to maintain this certain look, and it's doing us all a huge disservice. It's pretty actually insane. This normal is actually
like to have
very often very hard to like maintain.
To have like lots of curves but have a six-pack abs and like be thin while having like the ideal that exists right now is absolutely insane. Like 99% of people will never achieve that, and the people that do, like the freaking Kardashians, like they have surgery to look that way, and we're all then expected to look that way. It's kind of crazy, right? I just think of the Kardashians because I feel like they are kind of like the epitome of like the cultural like identity of like the ideal right now. Would y'all agree? I feel like that's kind of like what's in right now. Yeah, all nodding your heads like yeah. Who I just got caught up, and I went to New York City this weekend, and I have a friend who keeps me caught up on pop culture because I can't watch it because I get really pissed off watching it, and taught me all about all the surgery they're having. I'm like, this is crazy. This is why we all. Just drives me nuts that that's like what's being promoted these days
as normal.
And then they're also doing what, that like corset training, like that's not normal. It's not normal.
Yeah,
shouldn't need to manipulate your body in order to be perceived as beautiful.
So bad.
We are beautiful. Last thing I'll say with that, I'll get off my rants, I promise, is I think what's really helpful sometimes when you are feeling discouraged about things like body image is to think about the change that we can create in this world. And something whenever I have like a bad body image day, something that really helps me snap out of it is to think of, if I can learn to accept my body as it is and learn to accept that my body is not the ideal that exists right now, like imagine what can change for future generations. And my goal is my future children and just the next generation in general, they don't grow up seeing that there's only one way to look and only one way to be as a woman. And that's what snaps me out of it. So like, we have to, I feel like we're like this first generation that's really challenging the concept of ideals and of how we need to look and act and just be in general. And I think it's really hard to be the first to change things, but it's also really empowering.
Yeah, so like we got options here, which would be either to change our body or change the culture. I think we're all over the changing our body part of that. So like, let's join together and change the culture, because, and it starts with like, you know, a few people like us, the community, the tribe, which now has 1,000 people in it, which is awesome. Like, and like that creates a movement, and we can already, I think, see the ripple effects in a lot of ways. I mean, it's not just us. It's like everyone is, a lot of people are out there preaching this message because it's not okay and people are sick of it. So yeah. Cool.
Love it. Anyone else have any body image questions?
Cool.
Okay, let me move on. Okay, so I guess kind of related would be talking about dealing with compliments. If I get compliments about how I look, I assume it's to do with my weight and body, which I guess might not be the case. Secondly, it makes me want to try and maintain that body for forever, which I know is not realistic. So her question is, how can you accept compliments on your physical appearance without feeling pressure to control things to maintain, improve it? So ultimately, you can't control what other people say. People are going to compliment you. People are going to also tell you that you look terrible. Like, people are weird as hell. Like, if there's anything I've learned, like, people say weird as hell.
It's really inappropriate. Like, people have no filter
Yeah.
or shame.
Commenting on someone's body size is never
appropriate. Whether honestly,
No.
like whether you think they look good or not, like even if you mean it as a compliment,
You don't
shouldn't-
know what's underneath
You don't
the
know.
surface, so it's
Mhm.
never
You could-
appropriate.
yeah. It's not.
So I think the big thing here is you can't place your identity or how you feel about yourself based off of receiving compliments, right? So I will say, I think it's a wonderful thing to be able to accept compliments. I know so many people who like will avoid a compliment or not, accept it because they don't, that's like a lot of self-worth thing. So there's nothing wrong with accepting a compliment, but the important thing is not to base your value systems or your actions based off the compliments you receive, because as you guys probably all know, you'll never please everyone and everyone has different opinions, and ultimately it has to come back to you and your choices, not what other people are thinking or doing or believing in.
Yeah, when you're so caught up in other people and what they, like their compliments, that means you're caught up in what they think of you, and you're ultimately living in their judgment on you, and you're worried about what they're, which I totally resonate with this so hard, but at the end of the day, like you're just going to be living your life trying to please other people, both with how you look and your, like that's crazy. Why would we be wanting to like live our lives trying to appease other people and avoid judgment from other people? Because people are going to do what people do. And like, we can let them do that and we can just do our thing over here and like be happy for us and like do what makes us happy. And that is not manipulating ourselves and like reconnecting with our female intuition and our empowerment. Like all these things are fulfilling for us versus something that just kind of is not and detaches us from our intuition. So, oh, somebody else.
Yes, we actually have a couple new people in here. If y'all want, you're welcome to introduce yourselves. And what we're doing is just keeping things on mute until you're ready to talk, just so there's not like a lot of background noise. New people, do you want to introduce yourself, say who you are, where you live?
I don't know if they can hear us. That person looks like they're not.
New.
Or have we not got any digestive questions?
Well, maybe people don't have digestive questions.
Hey!
Hello?
I don't know if they can see us.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll keep going, but if you want to stop me and introduce yourself, please feel free to. All right. All right, I'm working with a nutritionist locally who's suggesting that I try going gluten-free for a month. I'm hesitant about this because I just started my intuitive eating journey. I have a history of autoimmune disease, and I'm interested to see if they would help reduce inflammation in my body. So I feel like it could be good to try, but I don't want to have a restrictive mindset help. Also, I have an acupuncturist who does a little bit of functional medicine work and is suggesting a GI map stool test sample to see what's going on in my gut. See, there you go. There's your gut health question. What do you usually recommend this for clients? How have you seen it be the most beneficial?
Cool.
Take it away.
Okay, so first of all, with the gluten thing, I don't want to act like I know what's going on with this person's life exactly, because I don't. And there's a time and a what?
I bring you to like one of my first questions, like what autoimmune condition is it?
Right.
Because like
what autoimmune condition?
What severity are we talking about?
Right. Like
there's a difference between like psoriasis and like having like
rheumatoid arthritis.
Rheumatoid, yeah.
Like, or I mean something way more severe, like
Yeah.
lupus or something.
Yeah.
So that's something to take into consideration. Also, cutting out gluten for some people is really beneficial. So we never want to negate that or say that's not a thing, because we really do believe that's a thing. But there really is a way, so she really needs to question like what's going on. Of course, we don't know what's going on exactly, like what's going on and whether that's weigh the pros and the cons, like, and the impact that's going to have like on her emotional well-being when it comes to food. But she also has got to remember, regardless of where she's at with that, cutting out gluten should not be like cutting out like a whole food group. Cutting out gluten can be done if you're really trying to pursue this really good relationship with food. It really can be done in a non-obsessive and non-restrictive way. It's not like you are, cutting out all bread, or it's not like you're cutting out all grains or all carbohydrates, and it should never be used as such. So she's got to be really mindful, I think, of keeping herself in check and making sure that she's getting the gluten-free bread, and she's getting the corn tortillas, and she's eating the gluten-free grains, and like having a lot of variety in her diet, and not just being a cop-out, like, oh, I can't eat that because I'm gluten-free, because that can be a really easy thing for, you know, somebody who has a history of disordered eating to fall back into, and using that as something that is like a crutch or, yeah, a cop-out.
Yeah, my thoughts are the same as you.
Okay.
Yep. I mean, I think autoimmune conditions and gluten-free do need to be something considered, but it depends on severity. I would think that your intuitive eating journey should come first, but again, it depends on the severity of your autoimmune condition. I mean, if it's, you know, dictating how you show up on a daily basis, maybe it is worth going ahead and going gluten-free. As Meg mentioned, it can be done in a very partnered way, or it can be done not that way. So it really just depends on what's going on with the situation and which thing needs to come first. You know, if your autoimmune condition isn't that severe, but you are having a really bad eating disorder, like maybe that journey needs to come first before you come back to autoimmune condition, gluten-free conversations. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
And then as far as so the next question was the GI map stool sample test that her acupuncturist recommended. If you guys are wondering what that is, that's basically a comprehensive stool sample that tells someone, like, yeah, everything that's going on in their poop, basically.
Like their microbiome, and
if there's parasites, if there's candida. Meg and I don't use it very often in our practice because we are more clinically based on IBS and SIBO, and haven't really felt the need to add that to our practice, but we've definitely had clients who've had it, and I think it's helpful for some. I haven't found it to like be big, I just haven't found it to be like that big of a thing.
it's definitely not the end-all be-all for us.
No.
And I've honestly never come to a situation with somebody's digestion that I'm like,
You
we
have to
need
do
a
this,
stool
yeah.
mapping. Like, I've never thought that. I think that it can be beneficial in certain situations, but I think for the vast majority, even those with digestive issues, I haven't seen it to be needed.
Yeah.
Like, it's not imperative to me.
I totally agree. What's funny is we did not go over these answers at all together, and we have the same answers. High five.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Hope that answered. Did y'all have any gut health questions?
Anybody having any digestive woes? Y'all are just in tip-top shape, apparently.
Okay, so last question that we're going to answer from the Facebook group, and then we'll go to talking about the book club. So with intuitive eating, is there a difference between what my head wants to eat and what my body wants? I love sweet foods, so if I go with that, then I would hardly ever eat anything savory, which I don't think would be good for my body. So I'm missing awareness to some intuitive eating signals for my body as to what it needs, and only noticing what my taste likes. How can I get to tuning in better? Okay, so my first thoughts are, yes, there's a difference between what your head wants and what your body wants. If you are still, like, again, as we keep saying, I know this is kind of annoying, but sometimes we do have to give general advice answers. Depends on where you are in your severity. Are you recovering from like an eating disorder, dieting, disordered eating? It really depends, I think, on that. But I think a lot of times, no matter where you are in that, like, even if it's the wide range, you really should challenge yourself to eat what the first thing that comes to mind. And if you're only craving sweet foods, I think you should totally honor that for a really long time until you get the desires to eat savory foods. I think that's silly to think that, like, I just don't think that needs to be like the main focus, is focusing on savory foods.
Well, yeah, and I think, like, as that journey continues to evolve and you continue to just honor what you want, it will align. Like what your mind wants and your body wants will eventually like become more on the same page. But until that happens, you have to go through this process, whether it can be a long time where you just eat what you want. I think honoring that emotional hunger, honestly, is like first thing. It's like imperative. You honor that. And then eventually they'll kind of get more on the same page, and it can be a lot easier to listen. Like, we don't ever want anybody though to really you shouldn't ever be second guessing your hunger and like, oh, is this just emotional hunger? Because that's just as valid, you know? Sorry.
You're getting distracted by me, aren't you?
She always does shit when I'm talking. And
what? Just
I can't concentrate when you're typing things.
I'm just trying to tell everyone they can also put questions in the group chat.
Okay.
And you guys can also talk to each other via that way too, if you like are not wanting to interrupt or something to that effect. Just trying to tell people what they can do. Okay, anything else with that we want to say?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, what do you guys think of the book club?
Have y'all read the book?
Have y'all started the book? I'm like obsessed with the book.
Anybody read the book? Kind of.
Kind of. Have we gotten through chapter 1? It's only, so if you were like, oh shoot, I didn't read it. Chapter 1 is only a few questions, or it's not that long. It's like a few pages.
Yeah.
So we're gonna ask the questions based off of the chapter, but you probably could be involved in the conversation even without having read the book. But no, chapter 1 is not very long. Okay, so for those of you who have read it, what are your thoughts on the evolution of femininity?
I think it's only one person who's read it.
Is it only one person read it?
Y'all are just.
You know what though?
Lock in on your homework. I'm just kidding.
It's good insight that we might need to give you guys a little bit more time. Would that be helpful if we gave you guys more time?
It's a really good book. Like it doesn't matter like what kind of, relationship with food you have now or previous, or it really is just, I really believe it's a book that all females should read because it's amazing. It doesn't just have to apply to.
I'm gonna go get it real quick. So if we haven't read it, I'm just gonna read like a few excerpts from it and then we can wrap things up. But I think I'm gonna go get it real quick. Hold on.
Oh, and if you don't, Becky, I know you've read it. I actually know you've read it. You did but you're on mute. But because she got the audiobook. I got the audiobook too. I actually need to get the actual book, but if y'all just want to like listen to something in your car, it's a really great audiobook read or audiobook listen.
All right. Do you want to explain your thoughts on the evolution of femininity? So one of the first things like the first chapter talks about is how women's bodies were celebrated and also how like the menstrual cycle was celebrated and seen as like a sacred time. That was actually one of the questions we had too, was what are your thoughts? Where's the question? What were you aware that the female body and even the menstrual cycle was once reverenced and praised? It was not shameful, it was sacred. What are some ways in which we can begin to appreciate our own menstrual cycles more? Which I think can be something we all talk about, right? So I think that's so cool to me to hear that used to be something. I think it used to be called like red tint something. Like there was like a name for it, and it was such a sacred time. And anytime like with the moons was also seen as really reverenced time too. And we've really lost that connection in our society, which kind of brings us into the third question we asked, which was what are your thoughts on the masculine society that we live in? Not saying that like no,
it's not a bad
thing. But like saying that like the rational and the logical is seen as, and the linear is seen as like that's kind of how we view things. And even talking about like the moon phases and our femininity and our menstrual cycles is a very feminine thing, and it's just not very talked about anymore.
Right. And yeah, I think women and culture in general, both on a cultural scale and like an individual scale, there are masculine and there are feminine sides.
That's what the yin yang is.
Yeah. And we need both in ourselves and culturally, but just talking about ourselves right now, we live in this culture where, like Victoria said, all the masculine traits are more praised, and those are shown as, being stronger and more superior. And so there are traits like being logical and being rational. And not that women are logical or rational, but we don't go off like data and numbers and analyzation. We go off like gut feeling and intuition, and we pursue dreams, and we go and like we're really, really connected with nature and like all these things that we've kind of been told since we were young. A lot of us, since we were really young, like stop doing that basically. And there's been this severance between women and their natural intuition. And I think as you'll see in this book, like it's really, really fascinating to see the relationship between that and like kind of how disordered eating can very easily manifest itself, because there is this severance in women. It is so important for us to have our relationship with our intuition. And it is like a part of us. So when we don't have that, and when that's been severed from a young age because society tells us that we shouldn't have those traits, then it can cause a lot of problems.
And I think that also, like, I think some of us are healing with disordered eating in mind. I think that's a huge part in recognizing that that's a feminine aspect. We have to be tuned into our intuition, and that's something that needs to be embraced again in order to have healing occur as well.
Yeah. And it goes down to like history of females and how, like Victoria said, the female body was praised, and it's and not even, it doesn't have to be like praised, it was just like normal, you know, like females were curvaceous, females were more round, and versus like the masculine form, which is more linear and rigid. And so now everything's really taken a turn for the masculine. And while of course that side is not bad, we all need it, when there's this overgrowth kind of this masculine energy, there can be a lot of issues.
Yeah, that's what I think was a really cool thing. That so the person who wrote this book is a psychologist or therapist. Yeah, therapist who specializes. She actually has an eating disorder center in Hawaii, actually, and she wrote this book based off of this. Something else I thought she was really fascinating that she talked about was how everyone in her clinic, when she noticed the overall theme with eating disorders, is we all as women had been unique and individual when we were young, and we were told to sever that connection to our uniqueness and to not stand out of the crowd, not stand out of the family. I resonated with that so deeply. Did any of you guys?
Yeah, like kind of like not stir the pot.
Not stir
like
the
keep
pot,
your thoughts to yourself and your intuition to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, so what's really cool about this book too is she uses metaphors and stories and analogies to make these descriptions. So it was a story about like this young, like it goes about a fable of like this child who like stood out and said something against the crowd and made everyone realize it. It was like really cool how else she brought the concept to that. And I could relate to that a lot.
Yeah. So I promise y'all, you will resonate with this book so hard. Like every woman will resonate with this book. It's a really good book.
So I'm gonna read a couple things that I've highlighted from it, from chapter 1, and then we can leave off there, or we can talk about a few more things and then go. Okay, so women's wisdom gained from their natural connection to nature through their menstrual cycle was revered. Women were respected for their power of their intuition and their understanding of the earth's ways. This wisdom was passed on from woman to woman, from mother to daughter, for thousands of years. Times passed and things have changed. Another thing I highlighted was women who taught the way of the circle, who used their connection to the earth for healing, who celebrated the feminine spirit, were imprisoned or killed. Generation after generation after generation watched their mothers and sisters basically like be like not embraced for celebrating their feminine power, which I thought was really fascinating to read about too. The other thing that I highlighted in here was by being shamed into pretending that her menstrual blood, which was kept her so connected to earth in many ways, doesn't exist, by denying her most powerful emotions and quieting her intuitive voice. So I know it's probably weird, y'all, that we're talking about like our menstrual cycle so much, but I think that is a very important part of like re-owning our feminine power, is seeing this as like not a weird thing to talk about. And again, like a lot of times being the first ones to talk about things does feel a little weird. Like sometimes when I'm talking about menstrual cycles, even on like Instagram, y'all, like I'm like, I can't believe I'm talking about like being on my period right now. But I think it's a really important thing to make it a normalized thing, so it's not so weird for us to talk about. So I know it can sometimes be weird that we have these conversations, but I think ultimately it's to normalize it too.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's worked, because right now I talk about menstrual cycle, cervical fluid, like all of these things all day, every day, and it's just like it is normal. It should be normal to talk about. Like when we remove like the secrecy and like that shame around it, and we just openly talk about it, because if we hide it, then it's like, why are we all like being taboo about this? Like, no, we need to own this. This is a huge part of us, and it's like an honor to be a female and to be a woman and to have a cycle. Anyways, yeah, it is.
So
they're awesome.
Woo! All right, anyone have any thoughts on what we've been talking about with the book? Like I said, we can definitely come back to these questions a little bit later on and give everyone a little bit more time to answer them.
Cool. So Amy's gonna get the book. It's so good.
Anybody have any thoughts or any questions with that we're talking about?
All right, y'all are easy to please.
All right, so last questions, last thoughts. Anything else y'all want us to cover right now? Y'all have 30 more minutes if you want it, but if you're good to go, we can wrap things up too. It's up to you guys.
And I know like this like group, I mean, it's a lot easier to ask something. This is like normal for Victoria and I because we talk to people online all the time, but it's kind of awkward if you're not used to
yeah,
like,
this will get easier and easier.
thing. And also it's different to ask something when it's very personal to you on like in public, whether it's 5 people or 1 person or 30 people, you know? So, yeah, I mean, if y'all have questions, you can always,
you can even, if you want them to be anonymous, you can actually send anonymous messages to us on here for the next Q&A we do, or you can always email them to us and we can keep it anonymous too. So.
Yeah, so there are options. We will answer your questions.
All right, any last thoughts, guys? Any last questions? Nod your head.
Y'all
Yes
are
or no?
awesome.
All right, we love each of you so much. Thank you guys for coming. We're gonna put the recording in, I think, the Facebook group, or I'll email it because it's all being recorded right now. So we'll get it to you guys if you want to rewatch it, and for those who weren't able to come.
Cool.
All right.
All right, bye y'all.
Bye guys. How do I end this?
Bye.